Hello, I'm Patricia Gras. Welcome to Passion Time, the show where the experts share what they're passionate about. I'm here with Dr. Richard Sindelar. He's a professor at the University of St. Thomas here in Houston. He was in the Foreign Service for many years and has written a book, Cross Currents in the Gulf, co-edited a book. But mainly he knows a lot about the Middle East, so it's great to have him here. We're going to talk about how to beat the terror that we are facing right now in the world. So we're going to talk about ISIS. But first I want to ask you a question that we ask everyone, and that is, how did you find your own passion?
My own passion. I found it actually in the study hall library at Strake Jesuit High School here.
Wow. You went to the library in high school. Very good.
You were not permitted to be outside of the library.
Right.
You couldn't just do study hall. You had to go to the library.
Those were the days.
And I was a bit of a cut up, so the librarian kept me right near the front of the room.
Okay.
And that's where the books were returned. And I would take the book off the top sometimes and just read what it was. And there was a book about the Foreign Service there.
Okay.
When I was in study hall, and I started reading it. It sounded very adventuresome, you know, diplomatic bags, eating clandestine cables before you're captured and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
So I decided the Foreign Service would be me, and then I went to Georgetown Foreign Service School.
Wonderful. Okay. Dr. Sindelar, today we want to talk about how can we really beat ISIS in the long run. We tend to go in and engage in conflict, and then something comes back to haunt us. In this case, it is ISIS. So tell me what your thoughts are on how we really need to approach. It doesn't seem like carpet bombing will do the job. So what do you think is, should we do? What is a good strategy for us to be looking at from your own experience?
Well, actually, you hit the nail on the head when you said long-term, because it's going to be a long-term fight. I kind of break down what we need to do into short, medium term, and what we ought to look at doing in the longer term to completely do away with the menace that is ISIL. Carpet bombing won't work. The best short-term way to diminish their influence but not get rid of them would be boots on the ground. Well, we're not going to do boots on the ground, so we need to realize they will be there in their little caliphate probably for 1, 2, 3, who knows how long, number of years.
Obviously, America is tired of war. We invaded Iraq. It sort of created some of what's happening now.
Correct.
So there's a lot of fear about boots on the ground. However, do you think that in some time the American people will say, well, maybe we do need to send some troops over there along with, you know, a coalition?
Well, we've kind of done that already with our supposed trainers and our special operations group teams that are in there and have actually helped fight alongside some of the Kurdish militias. So we're going to have some boots on the ground, but to really defeat them in their caliphate would require thousands of troops, and I just don't think anybody wants that fight. We also have to evaluate, as I say in my international security class, we've got to evaluate what the real risk and threat is to America.
Right.
And quite frankly, a caliphate in the desert in Syria and Iraq presents a very low threat to us, save for the odd terrorist attack. And as we found out in San Bernardino, those terrorist attacks tend to be inspired by local people who are already here locally who are inspired by what's going on there. So by defeating them on the ground there, we don't end the problem at home anyway. So I don't think boots on the ground are the answer.
How would we then go about if we as a nation decide no boots on the ground, we're going to keep bombing? Apparently a lot of people are saying the bombing isn't working. What would work? Let's talk about what you called soft diplomacy, right?
Correct.
Some of the things that need to happen so that it seems to be like a tribal, what's inside there, it seems to be like a tribal war, right? ISIS against everybody else. They're mostly Sunnis, so the Shiites are fighting them and all these different groups and the army. What needs to happen, do you think, politically so that ISIS can be defeated?
Well, I think if again we look at short, medium, and long term, in the short term, I think the package we're using is about the best that can be for the moment. And the package we're using now are selected drone strikes, air raids, maybe special operations forces. These keep them off balance, and importantly, to the extent we can kill their leaders, behead the organization, so it's always having to reform itself. To the extent airstrikes make it dangerous to be in the field with ISIL, then you hopefully stem your recruiting a little bit. So that works locally in that area. Then you have stop the financing, work with the Saudis and others to stop the financing.
That's a huge problem, isn't it?
Work to clamp down on the illegal antiquities market. Work with basically what amounts to various intelligence and policing organizations to cut the weapons flow. And try to work at home on identifying terrorists before they go there, before they go to join. Now that's kind of hard to do
issue,
through social media.
Right, and let's talk about social media. That's a huge issue because they're using social media apparently very well.
Correct.
And very successfully. And when I was actually in Europe when the attacks happened in Paris.
Oh my heavens.
I was in Rome. And one of the things that they said right away, people who anonymously decided, we are going to get involved in social media and we're going to be hacking what they're doing. My question is our government really ready to deal with it? How can they deal with the hacking or stopping the attraction to so many young people around the world who decide, oh, this is going to be a wonderful experience for me. I need to join ISIS, right? It's going to be great because that's what they're telling them.
Correct.
So how do we stop that?
Well, actually, and this is looking at it longer term. What we have to do is you and I need to work together. The educators need to be better about educating people, and the media needs to be better about getting out the bad story there about, rather than focusing on what ISIL's doing, focus on what it is that happens to these people when they join ISIL. They become slaves to the gun, or if they're women, they become sex slaves to the leaders. So try to get that word out. Get that word out through social media. The State Department a year or so ago ran a very interesting video that got a lot of attention, what I'd call counter-propaganda, in which they said they attempted a spin on an ISIL recruiting video where they said, come, join ISIL, die, get killed, get enslaved.
Get beheaded.
And get beheaded, and it was very bloody. The State Department was criticized for making it bloody, but that's the story.
That's what you need.
You've got
that's what they're
to
playing
tell.
with.
And I hope the State Department does more of that. I would hope that our government, through the Cyber Command, might try striking back through hacking their systems. I don't know if that's being done for sure or not. I haven't heard anything to that
I
effect.
haven't heard anything, but I think that's
anonymous and private groups have begun
Private
to
groups have
begun hacking. Yeah.
There's something going on right now that's also, I wanted to get your input on this. Saudi Arabia and Iran, they've never liked each other. They've been fighting each other for probably centuries.
Correct.
And right now they're at it again. How is this going to affect the efficacy of trying to do anything against ISIS right now?
It creates a much more complicated swamp with many more alligators in it, is what it amounts to, because you have two big players, one with money and one with the credibility, if you will, or the empowerment that comes with being the protectors of the holy places, and then you have the other side, the Shia in Iran.
Well, they're Shiites against Sunnis once again.
Correct, yeah, exactly. So that creates a big set of additional complications. If Iran wants to support Bashar al-Assad, so they would not be so much in favor of defeating ISIL.
Right.
They want to defeat ISIL for that reason, not because of any defense of the Iraqis. In Iraq, they are paired up with the Shia government. If you go to southern Iraq, half of the signs now are in Farsi, the Iranian language, because more and more that province is becoming a province of Iran. So they want to support, so they're on our side in defeating ISIL over time. but they have a different agenda supporting different people than we're interested in. The one thing they're not interested in is helping the Sunnis who live in that area. So that means the problem festers if the Sunnis aren't taken care of in that area.
And that seems to be the big issue, because these countries have the different tribes, and anyway. Do you see this? And one of the fears is, and of course this is what they want, ISIS would love, is for us to say this is a clash of civilizations. It's the West against the East, or it's Christianity against Islam. What are your thoughts on that, and how can we, the media, play a better role in assuring that this is not a clash of civilizations?
Well, that's what ISIL wants, is for the West to come in and put boots on the ground so it can be a clash of civilizations. So that would, one thing to think about is, do we want boots on the ground? We don't. So what do we do instead? I think, unfortunately, here the West is still going to be a big player. We're basically faced with a system we invented in the Sykes-Picot Agreement and the subsequent Treaty of Severus, where we drew marks-a-lot lines that bore no relationship to what the real structure was in the area. Yes. One thing would be for there to be a conference, maybe a spin-off of the Syrian conference, where we would think, and I'm not the one who originally had this thought, but that we maybe do a Yugoslavia where we break up into different zones.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, Dr. Sindelar, again, we could talk for hours on this, but let's hope things get better and that this war ends. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Yo sé que tú puedes, que tú eres capaz. Cambia tu vida. La vida es una y tú vas a triunfar. Cambia tu vida. Con fe y esperanza, las puertas